Sometimes the person who walks away from love believes escape will bring peace. A person may hide emotions, create distance, or search for a new connection while believing that a fresh beginning will remove old pain. But the human heart carries memories, emotions, and unresolved wounds.
Running from feelings rarely removes them. It often creates a silent battle inside. Betrayal creates a powerful emotional turning point.
The person who was hurt feels the loss of trust, while the person who caused the pain may eventually face a deeper struggle within. The biggest loss after betrayal is sometimes losing the one person who offered genuine understanding, patience, and emotional safety. So, why does a person who fears emotional closeness sometimes end up facing the exact feelings that were being avoided? Why does someone who tries to protect the heart through distance sometimes experience greater emotional pain later? In this video, we will explore the hidden psychology behind attachment, emotional protection, and relationship betrayal. We will uncover why an avoidant woman may struggle with deep connection, why vulnerability can feel threatening, and how old emotional patterns can influence decisions in love. This topic goes beyond simple ideas of right and wrong. Avoidant attachment does not mean someone is a bad person. It often develops as a protective response created through past experiences, emotional wounds, and learned survival patterns. A person may learn that showing feelings creates danger, disappointment, or rejection. Over time, emotional walls can become a way to feel safe, but those same walls that protect the heart can also block the love a person truly wants. A person with avoidant patterns can desire affection and still feel uncomfortable when someone gets emotionally close. Inside, a conflict begins. One side wants connection, warmth, and acceptance. Another side fears dependence, emotional exposure, and the possibility of being hurt. In this video, you will discover the lesser-known reasons behind this emotional struggle. You will learn how avoidance can affect relationships, why some people only recognize the value of a connection after losing it, and how the mind tries to protect itself even when those protections create pain. We will also explore the emotional journey after betrayal, including guilt, reflection, regret, and the moment when a person begins to understand the impact of personal choices. The goal is deeper understanding of human behavior, emotional healing, and the patterns that shape relationships. Stay until the end, because the final part reveals one of the most important truths about avoidant behavior. The greatest challenge is often not losing someone else, but finally facing the emotions that were hidden for years. Welcome to our channel, where we explore psychology, attachment patterns, emotional healing, and the hidden forces behind human relationships.
If you want to understand the deeper side of love and emotional behavior,
Subscribe to our channel and continue this journey with us. The first
stage. Why betrayal can feel like freedom before betrayal happens.
The emotional journey often begins long before the actual action takes place. For someone with avoidant attachment patterns, difficult emotions can sometimes feel overwhelming. Instead of sitting with discomfort, expressing fears or discussing relationship problems openly, the person may begin creating emotional distance. This distance can feel like protection because it creates space between themselves and the feelings they struggle to process. The mind starts searching for a way to reduce emotional pressure, and leaving the
Situation can appear like the easiest solution. Avoidant individuals often develop strategies that help them feel emotionally safe.
they may learn to disconnect from feelings that create anxiety, fear, or vulnerability. When a relationship becomes deeper, the emotional expectations can feel intense. Conversations about needs, commitment, or future plans may create internal pressure. Instead of viewing these moments as opportunities for connection, the person may interpret them as signs that they are losing independence or becoming emotionally trapped. This is where emotional distance begins. Small disagreements may feel bigger than they are. A simple conversation about feelings can become uncomfortable. The person may stop sharing thoughts, avoid difficult discussions, or slowly become less emotionally available. From the outside, it may look like a loss of interest, but internally, it can be a reaction to emotional discomfort. The person is trying to escape the feelings that come with closeness rather than addressing the deeper reason behind those feelings. When another person enters the picture, the situation can become even more complicated.
A new connection may feel exciting because it does not carry the emotional history of the previous relationship. There are no painful conversations from the past.
There are no unresolved disagreements. There is no pressure to explain old behaviors or face difficult emotions. Everything feels lighter because the new relationship exists in a space where expectations have not fully developed yet. This creates an emotional illusion. The new person can appear like freedom. The new experience can feel like a fresh start. The individual may believe that the problem was the previous relationship, the previous partner, or the circumstances surrounding them. The excitement of something new can temporarily cover the discomfort that existed before. A new connection often provides emotional distance from old struggles. The person does not have to immediately face deep vulnerability. They do not have to reveal their fears, insecurities, or emotional wounds. They can present the version of themselves that feels easier to show. Without the weight of history, the relationship may feel effortless, but the emotions that were avoided do not disappear. The unresolved fears, attachment patterns, and emotional conflicts remain beneath the surface. Changing the situation does not automatically change the internal experience. A person may leave one relationship hoping to escape emotional pressure, but the same fears can eventually appear again in a different form. The reason this happens
Is because the true struggle often exists within the person's relationship with emotions. If someone has learned that closeness creates risk, then even a healthy relationship can activate fear.
if someone believes dependence means weakness, then receiving love can feel uncomfortable. If someone fears rejection, they may create distance first to avoid feeling abandoned later. This creates a confusing emotional cycle. The person wants connection but becomes uncomfortable when connection becomes real. They desire love but struggle with the vulnerability required to maintain it. They seek peace but may choose actions that create more emotional confusion. At the beginning, betrayal or emotional withdrawal may feel like a way to regain control. It can create a temporary sense of relief because the person feels they've escaped
A difficult situation. The emotional pressure decreases for a moment.
The mind feels calmer because it no longer has to face the same conversations, expectations, or fears. However, this relief is often temporary because it is built on avoidance rather than emotional resolution. The uncomfortable feelings that were pushed away can return later through regret, confusion, loneliness, or the realization that something valuable was lost. The most challenging part is that the person may only recognize this pattern after the excitement fades. When the new experience becomes normal, the same emotional challenges can begin appearing again. The absence of old problems does not always mean the presence of true peace. Sometimes it only means the deeper issues have been given more time before they return. The hidden emotional cost of betrayal often creates a moment that looks very different from the outside compared to what happens internally. A person may believe they have made a decision that brings relief, independence, or emotional freedom. They may feel that leaving an uncomfortable situation or choosing a different path has removed the pressure they were carrying. However, once the excitement fades, a different emotional reality can begin to appear. For someone with avoidant attachment patterns, the aftermath of betrayal can create a complicated internal experience. The person may have spent a long time protecting themselves from difficult emotions, but betrayal can force those emotions to come closer to the surface. Feelings that were ignored or pushed away may suddenly become harder to avoid. One of the first emotions that can appear is confusion. The person may struggle to understand why they feel unsettled after making a choice they believed would bring happiness. They may question their own feelings, their decisions, and the reasons behind their actions. The mind can become caught between two conflicting experiences, the desire for freedom and the realization that something meaningful has been lost. This emotional confusion happens because human connections are complex. A person can feel frustrated with a relationship and still care deeply about the other person. A person can want distance and still miss the emotional safety they once experienced. These conflicting feelings can create an internal struggle where the person feels unsure about what they truly want. Guilt can also become a powerful emotional consequence. Even someone who struggles with vulnerability or emotional closeness can recognize when their actions have caused pain. The mind may begin replaying past moments, conversations, and decisions. They may remember the trust that existed, the support they received, and the moments when someone tried to create a deeper connection. Guilt becomes especially difficult when the person realizes that the problem was not only the relationship itself. Sometimes the deeper issue was an emotional pattern that existed before the relationship. The fear of closeness, difficulty expressing needs, or discomfort with vulnerability may have influenced their choices. The betrayal may have been an action, but the emotional struggle behind it may have existed for years. Another hidden cost is the loss of trust. Trust is one of the strongest foundations in any relationship, and once it is damaged, rebuilding it can become extremely difficult. This loss affects both people involved. The person who was betrayed may struggle to feel safe again, while the person who caused the betrayal may lose trust in themselves. They may begin questioning their ability to create and maintain a healthy connection. This can create a painful realization. The person may discover that escaping one emotional challenge created another emotional burden. The freedom they searched for may come with loneliness, regret, or the awareness that they damaged a bond that offered genuine care. A deeper challenge appears when the person tries to understand their own feelings. Avoidant individuals may have spent years learning how to minimize emotional discomfort. They may have become skilled at distracting themselves, focusing on logic, or creating distance when emotions become intense. After betrayal, these strategies may become less effective because the emotional consequences become impossible to ignore. The mind eventually asks difficult questions. Was the relationship truly the problem? Was leaving the only option? Was the fear of emotional closeness stronger than the desire for connection? These questions can become the beginning of self-reflection. They can reveal that the pain was never only about the other person. It was also connected to personal fears, old emotional wounds, and beliefs about love and vulnerability. Running away from emotional pain does not remove the pain. It only delays the moment when a person has to face it. Avoiding difficult emotions may provide temporary relief, but unresolved feelings often return when the distractions disappear. The most difficult moments often come when the person realizes that the emotional safety they avoided was also the thing they needed most. The connection they once viewed as pressure may later be understood as something valuable. The patience, acceptance, and understanding they received may become clearer after distance creates space for reflection. This realization does not happen overnight. Emotional awareness requires honesty and the willingness to look beyond the surface. A person must recognize that changing situations cannot always heal internal struggles. True peace comes from understanding the emotions that created the patterns in the first place. The hidden cost of betrayal is often the emotional confrontation that follows. The person may have escaped a conversation, a conflict, or a difficult feeling in the beginning, but eventually they may have to meet those emotions again and understand what they were trying to reveal. When reality replaces the fantasy, At the beginning of a new relationship, everything can feel different. The emotions feel lighter, the connection feels easier. There is a sense of excitement because the person is entering a situation without the weight of previous conflicts, difficult emotional expectations. The mind often focuses on the positive parts of the new experience because everything feels fresh and uncomplicated. For someone who has struggled with emotional pressure in a previous relationship, this new connection may feel like freedom. There is no history of disagreements. There are no painful memories attached to the person. There is no immediate need to explain fears, insecurities, or emotional struggles. The relationship exists in a stage where everything appears simple. This is where the fantasy begins. The person may believe they have finally found the answer to their emotional discomfort. They may think the previous relationship created the problem and that the new relationship has solved it. The excitement can feel like proof that they made the right decision. The absence of emotional challenges can be mistaken for true compatibility. But relationships naturally move beyond the beginning stage. The early excitement eventually transforms into something deeper. Real intimacy begins to develop. The person starts seeing the other individual on the surface level. Emotional needs become clearer. Expectations become more realistic. The relationship requires communication, honesty, and the ability to handle uncomfortable moments. This is where old patterns can begin to appear again. A person who struggles with vulnerability may feel comfortable when the relationship is exciting and unpredictable, but deeper emotional connection can create new challenges. When someone starts asking meaningful questions, expressing deeper feelings, or wanting more emotional closeness, the same fears that existed before may return. The fear of losing independence may appear again. The fear of being emotionally exposed may return. The fear of being hurt may become stronger. The person may begin feeling the same internal pressure they experienced before, even though the relationship has changed. This can be confusing because the mind may have believed that a new person would create a completely different emotional experience. However, emotional patterns often travel with the person until they are recognized and addressed. The relationship was never just about the circumstances. It was also about the emotional beliefs carried inside. A person may change partners, locations, or situations, but the same internal fears can continue influencing behavior. If someone learned to protect themselves by creating distance, they may eventually create distance again. If someone learned that vulnerability feels dangerous, they may continue avoiding emotional openness, even with someone who cares deeply. This is the moment when reality replaces the fantasy. The person begins to understand that the excitement of a new relationship was temporary, but emotional patterns are much deeper. The new connection did not remove the fear. It only created a temporary environment where the fear was easier to ignore. As emotional responsibility returns, the person must face the parts of themselves they previously avoided. A healthy relationship requires showing up emotionally. It requires listening, communicating, accepting imperfections, and allowing another person to truly see who they are. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this can feel challenging because being truly seen creates vulnerability. The same walls that once provided protection can become barriers that prevent genuine connection. The person may start asking themselves difficult questions. Why do I feel uncomfortable when someone gets close? Why do I feel the urge to escape when things become serious? Why do I feel safer when there is distance between me and the person I care about? These questions can create an important moment of awareness. They reveal that the struggle was deeper than the relationship itself. The conflict was connected to emotional defenses that were built over time. The emotional walls that once helped the person survive difficult experiences may now prevent them from experiencing deeper love. Protection and connection can sometimes move in opposite directions. The same walls that block pain can also block closeness. This realization can be painful because it requires responsibility. It means looking beyond blaming the relationship, the partner, or the circumstances. It means recognizing that personal patterns influence emotional outcomes. The truth is that a new relationship can create a new beginning, but it cannot automatically create a new emotional foundation. Real change happens when a person becomes willing to understand themselves, face their fears, and learn a healthier way of connecting. When the fantasy fades, reality provides an opportunity. It shows the person that the answer was never only outside of themselves. The deeper journey begins when they stop searching for escape and start understanding the emotions that shaped their choices. The moment she realizes what she lost. The realization of loss often does not happen in a moment of separation. Sometimes it appears later, when the noise fades and the emotional distance creates a space for reflection. In the beginning, a person may focus on the reasons they wanted to leave, the emotions they wanted to escape, or the sense of relief that came from removing themselves from a difficult situation. But as time passes, the mind can begin to see the relationship from a different perspective. The person she betrayed may have represented something deeper than a romantic connection. They may have represented emotional safety, acceptance, patience, and a place where she felt understood. These qualities can become easier to recognize after they are no longer available. When someone is always present, their value can sometimes become invisible. The daily conversations, emotional support, and consistent care may feel normal. The person may assume that this type of connection will always exist. But when that person steps away, the absence creates a different emotional experience. Silence can reveal what constant presence sometimes hides. For someone with avoidant patterns, emotional distance may initially feel comfortable. They may believe that having space means they have regained control. They may feel less pressure because they no longer have to face difficult conversations or emotional expectations. However, when the other person stops reaching out, stops trying to repair things, and accepts the separation, a different reality can begin to appear. The emotional dynamic changes. The person who once provided reassurance is no longer available in the same way. The constant understanding and patience are no longer guaranteed. The avoidant person may begin noticing the difference between temporary emotional freedom and the deeper feeling of losing someone who genuinely cared. This is often when reflection begins. They may remember moments that once seemed ordinary, the conversations where someone listened without judgment, the times when someone offered support during difficult periods, the moments when they were accepted despite their fears and imperfections. These memories can create a powerful realization. The relationship was not only about emotional pressure. It was also about emotional security. Many people with avoidant tendencies struggle because closeness can activate fear. They may focus heavily on the discomfort of intimacy while overlooking the comfort that intimacy provides. Their mind may pay more attention to moments when they felt overwhelmed rather than the moments when they felt valued. Distance can change that perspective. When the person who was betrayed begins moving forward, the avoidant individual may experience a shift. The person who was always available is no longer waiting. The emotional safety they once had access to is no longer something they can assume will remain. This does not mean every avoidant person reacts the same way. Human emotions are complex and each person responds differently. However, for someone who has avoided facing their feelings, separation can create a moment where those feelings become harder to ignore. The absence creates room for questions. Did I lose someone who truly understood me? Did I mistake emotional closeness for emotional pressure?
Was I running away from the relationship, or was I running away from my own fears? These questions can become uncomfortable because they require honesty.
They require looking beyond the immediate emotions of the situation and examining the deeper patterns that influence decisions. One of the hardest realizations is understanding that genuine connection is rare. Finding someone who accepts imperfections, communicates with patience, and offers emotional stability is not something that happens easily. When that connection disappears, the value of what was lost can become much clearer. The person may begin to understand that the relationship was not only about receiving love, it was also about being seen, being known, being accepted without having to constantly prove worth. For someone who has built emotional walls, losing a person who could see beyond those walls can feel especially significant. The very person they pushed away may have been the person who created the safest environment for them to become more emotionally open. The realization of loss is often a quiet process. It does not always appear through dramatic actions or immediate regret. Sometimes it happens privately, through memories, reflection, the understanding that something meaningful was left behind. When someone stops chasing, the emotional reality becomes clearer.
The absence removes distractions and allows the person to see the relationship without the same defenses that influenced their earlier choices.
In that space, they may finally recognize the difference between escaping discomfort and losing genuine connection.
Why losing a secure partner? Person.
Losing a secure partner can create a deeper emotional impact than some people expect because a secure relationship often provides something that feels simple but is extremely valuable. Emotional stability. A secure partner usually brings consistency, patience, and a sense of safety. They create an environment where both people can express feelings, solve problems, and grow together. For someone who has spent years protecting themselves from emotional discomfort, this type of relationship can feel unfamiliar. A secure partner often approaches love differently. They do not see emotional closeness as a threat. They understand that disagreements are part of relationships, and they believe problems can be solved through communication.
Instead of creating distance when emotions become intense,
They try to create understanding. This steady approach can feel comforting, but for someone with avoidant patterns, it can also feel challenging. The reason is connected to how the nervous system learns emotional experiences. A person's past experiences can influence what feels familiar and what feels uncomfortable. If someone has learned that emotional closeness leads to disappointment, rejection, or loss of independence, then deep connection may activate protective reactions. A healthy relationship can sometimes feel does not create the emotional highs and lows that a person may be used to. There is emotional chasing, less fear of losing the connection every moment. Instead, there is calmness and reliability, but calmness can feel unfamiliar. The nervous system may confuse peace with boredom because it has become accustomed to emotional intensity.
a relationship that feels stable may seem less exciting
Compared to situations filled with uncertainty, distance, or constant emotional challenges. The person may mistake the absence of chaos for the absence of passion. This is one of the hidden struggles within avoidant patterns. The person may desire love but feel uncomfortable when love becomes safe. They may want someone who understands them but feel exposed when someone gets close enough to truly see them. The very qualities that make a secure partner valuable can also activate fears that have been hidden beneath the surface. Emotional safety requires vulnerability. Vulnerability means allowing another person to understand thoughts, fears, insecurities, and emotional needs. It means accepting that connection involves some level of risk.
A person must allow themselves to be known instead of constantly protecting their image of independence.
For someone with avoidant tendencies, this can feel overwhelming. They may have learned to rely heavily on themselves and may associate needing someone with weakness. When a secure partner offers love, support, and patience, it can challenge old beliefs about relationships. The person may begin feeling uncomfortable because they are receiving something they have always wanted, but do not fully know how to accept. A secure partner does not only provide affection, they also provide a mirror. Through a healthy connection, a person may begin seeing emotional patterns they previously ignored. They may notice their fear of closeness, their habit of withdrawing, or their difficulty expressing emotions. This awareness can feel uncomfortable because growth often requires facing parts of ourselves that we have avoided. When a secure partner is lost, the person may eventually recognize the difference between emotional pressure and emotional support. What once felt like someone asking for too much may later be understood as someone asking for basic connection. What once felt like losing freedom may later be understood as an opportunity for deeper emotional intimacy. The challenge is that people often recognize the value of stability after experiencing its absence. When the secure partner is no longer available, the contrast becomes clearer. The person may realize that the relationship provided a level of understanding and acceptance that is difficult to replace. The loss can reveal that emotional safety was never the enemy. The discomfort came from the vulnerability required to receive it. A secure partner does not remove all problems from a relationship. Every relationship has challenges, disagreements, and moments of uncertainty. The difference is that a secure connection provides a foundation where those challenges can be faced together instead of avoided. For someone with avoidant patterns, losing this type of relationship can be difficult because they are losing more than a person. They are losing an environment where emotional healing and growth were possible. The relationship may have offered a chance to experience love in a way that felt different from past experiences. Sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that the connection they were trying to escape may have been the connection that could have helped them feel safe. The stability, patience, and consistency they once viewed as unfamiliar may later become the qualities they realized they needed most. The consequences of avoiding self-reflection. One of the biggest challenges in emotional growth is the willingness to look inward. Many people focus on changing their circumstances, changing relationships, or finding a new environment because external changes can feel easier than facing internal struggles.
However, when a person avoids self-reflection,
The same emotional patterns can continue appearing in different situations. A person may believe that the problem was caused by the relationship, the partner, or the circumstances surrounding them. They may think that finding someone new will create a different experience. A new relationship can feel like a fresh start, but if the emotional patterns remain unchanged, the same difficulties can eventually return. This happens because emotional habits are carried from one relationship to another. The way someone handles conflict, expresses needs, responds to closeness, or protects themselves during difficult moments often comes from deeper beliefs and experiences. A change in partners does not automatically create a change in emotional behavior. For someone with avoidant patterns, the cycle may continue in a familiar way. At the beginning of a relationship, everything may feel comfortable because there is less emotional pressure. The person may enjoy connection while the relationship feels light and effortless. But as intimacy grows, old fears may begin to appear again. The person may start feeling overwhelmed by emotional closeness. They may create distance, avoid difficult conversations, or convince themselves that something is wrong with the relationship. Without self-awareness, these reactions can feel like natural responses instead of patterns that need attention. Over time, this can create a repeating cycle. A person becomes close to someone. Emotional vulnerability increases. Fear or discomfort appears. Distance is created. The relationship begins to suffer. The person searches for a new situation where the same emotions have not appeared yet. Without reflection, the person may continue believing that the answer exists outside themselves. They may search for the perfect partner, the perfect connection, or the perfect situation that will finally make relationships feel easy. But every relationship eventually requires emotional honesty, communication, and vulnerability. The challenge is that running away from emotional discomfort can create temporary relief but long-term confusion. Avoiding feelings may remove a difficult moment, but it does not remove the reason that moment felt difficult. A person who avoids self-reflection may continue asking external questions. Why do relationships always become stressful?
Why do I lose interest when someone gets close? Why do I feel trapped when someone loves me deeply?
These questions can remain unanswered until the person becomes willing to examine their own emotional responses. Self-reflection does not mean blaming oneself for every problem. It means
Developing awareness of personal patterns. It means understanding why certain situations create strong reactions and recognizing the beliefs behind those reactions. For example,
a person may discover that their need for distance is connected to a fear of rejection. Another person may realize that avoiding emotional conversations comes from a belief that conflict always leads to loss. These discoveries create an opportunity for change because awareness comes before transformation. Without awareness, patterns often repeat because the mind continues using the same strategies that once created emotional protection. A person may continue building walls without realizing those walls are also preventing deeper connection. The search for something outside themselves can become exhausting. A person may constantly look for a different relationship, a different partner, or a different emotional experience while carrying the same unresolved fears into every new situation. True healing begins when someone understands that the goal is not simply finding a person who feels easy to love. The goal is becoming someone who can receive love without constantly feeling the need to escape. This requires emotional honesty. It requires accepting uncomfortable feelings instead of immediately running from them. It requires learning that vulnerability is not the same as losing control. Self-awareness allows a person to recognize the difference between genuine incompatibility and emotional fear. Sometimes leaving a relationship is the right decision, but sometimes the urge to leave comes from a deeper pattern that has never been addressed. When someone begins examining their own emotional world, relationships can start to change. They become more capable of communicating needs, understanding emotions, and creating healthier connections.
happens when a person stops searching only for a different
Understanding, shaping their choice each choice. Changing partners may change the situation, but self-awareness changes the person experiencing the situation. The other side. What happens when she finally faces herself? The most important moment in emotional growth begins when a person stops looking only at what happened around them and starts looking within themselves. After experiencing loss, regret, or the consequences of their choices, a person may reach a point where avoiding emotions no longer feels possible. The walls that once provided protection may begin to feel like barriers preventing real connection and personal growth. Facing oneself requires courage because it means accepting parts of life that may feel uncomfortable. It means looking honestly at decisions, reactions, and emotional patterns without creating excuses or placing all responsibility on external situations. This process is challenging, but it can become the beginning of meaningful change. A person begins to change when they accept responsibility for their actions. Responsibility does not mean carrying endless shame or believing they are a bad person. It means recognizing that choices have consequences and understanding how those choices affect others. Growth happens when someone can say, "My actions came from somewhere, and I need to understand that place." This awareness creates a shift. Instead of focusing only on what another person did wrong, the person begins exploring their own emotional responses. They start asking deeper questions about why they reacted the way they did, why certain situations felt threatening, and why emotional closeness created discomfort. Understanding attachment wounds can become an important part of this journey. Many emotional patterns are connected to earlier experiences, beliefs, and lessons learned throughout life. A person may have developed protective behaviors because those behaviors once helped them feel safe. Creating distance, hiding emotions, or avoiding dependence may have been ways to protect themselves from emotional pain. However, protection that was useful in the past can become limiting in the present. When a person begins understanding these patterns, they can separate their past from their current relationships. They can recognize that feeling vulnerable does not always mean danger. They can learn that allowing someone close does not automatically lead to disappointment or loss of independence. Another important step is learning emotional communication. Healthy relationships require the ability to express feelings, discuss problems, and share needs openly. For someone who has spent years avoiding emotional conversations, this skill may feel unfamiliar at first. Emotional communication is not about saying everything perfectly. It is about creating honesty and understanding. It means learning how to explain emotions instead of shutting down. It means allowing another person to understand what is happening internally instead of expecting them to guess. This creates a different type of connection. Instead of protecting the relationship through distance, the person begins protecting the relationship through openness and trust. Allowing vulnerability is another major part of transformation. Vulnerability can feel frightening because it requires lowering emotional defenses. It means accepting that love involves being seen completely, including fears, weaknesses, and imperfections. For someone with avoidant patterns, vulnerability may initially feel like losing control. But over time, they may discover that vulnerability can create deeper emotional safety. The ability to be open allows relationships to move beyond surface level connection and into genuine intimacy. The goal of this process is not punishment. The goal is awareness. A person does not grow by constantly attacking themselves for past mistakes. Growth happens when they understand the reasons behind their behavior and choose a healthier path moving forward. Shame often keeps people trapped, while awareness creates the possibility of change. When someone finally stops running from themselves, they begin developing a stronger relationship with their own emotions. They no longer need to escape every uncomfortable feeling. They learn that difficult emotions can be experienced, understood, and managed. This transformation does not happen instantly. It requires patience, honesty, and consistent effort. Old patterns may appear again, but awareness creates the ability to respond differently. The person begins noticing emotional reactions before automatically acting on them. Over time, relationships can become more balanced. Love no longer feels like a threat. Closeness no longer feels like a loss of freedom. Emotional connection, emotional connection becomes something that can be experienced instead of something that must be avoided. The person who once
From emotional discomfort may eventually discover that the real freedom they were searching for was never found by escaping others. It was found by understanding themselves.
When someone faces their fears, accepts responsibility, and learns to connect in healthier ways, they create the possibility of a different future. The past may explain their patterns, but it does not have to control their future. True healing begins when a person finally chooses to stop running and starts becoming emotionally present. Betrayal can break trust, create deep emotional wounds, and change the way two people see each other. But beyond the pain, betrayal can also reveal something much deeper. It can uncover the emotional patterns, fears, and unresolved feelings that a person may have avoided for years. The biggest collapse after hurting someone is often not losing another person. It is facing the parts of yourself that were hidden behind emotional walls. It is realizing escaping difficult feelings does not remove them. It only delays the moment when you have to finally understand them. True healing begins when someone stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What do I need to understand about myself?" That question creates awareness. It creates growth. It allows a person to look beyond mistakes and begin building a healthier relationship with themselves and with others. A person's past may explain their emotional patterns, but it does not have to define their future. Change becomes possible when someone accepts responsibility, learns from their experiences, and becomes willing to face the events they once avoided. If this video gave you a deeper understanding of avoidant attachment, emotional patterns, and the hidden psychology behind relationships, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story may help someone else feel understood. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to our channel for more psychology-based relationship insights, attachment patterns, emotional healing topics, and deeper explorations of human behavior. Thank you for watching, and continue your journey toward greater self-awareness and emotional growth.